Locked On Podcast Network presents Locked On Sports Today.
Are the Lakers wasting this vintage performance from LeBron James? Also, we tell you the storylines you should care about from the NFL Combine, and Victor Wembanyama will make it easy to build yet another title contender in San Antonio. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. New customers join today and you'll get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 or more wins. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. I'm Peter Bukowski, starting your day with the can't miss stories and biggest debates in sports. You're Locked On Sports Today.
Searching all major sports. Found.
Let's start with the biggest story.
LeBron James already scored more regular season points than any player in NBA history. On Saturday night, he became the first to join the 40,000 club in a loss, a 124-114 loss to the Denver Nuggets. Andy Kamenetsky from Locked On Lakers joins me now. And Andy, I think when you break down what has happened this season, and we have done it on this show over and over the course of the year, wondering
why. It does feel like we're together a lot, Peter. It really does.
It does. And I think the question that we have to ask at some point is, are the Lakers just content wasting this season away with LeBron James?
I mean, I don't think they're content. Like, I don't think complacency is the issue with this team, or certainly at the very least, not over like the last few weeks or so, where I think they've been, a couple games aside, pretty dialed in. Certainly the loss to Denver, that was not an issue of complacency or, I don't know, looking ahead to Oklahoma City or past the defending champions.
They just got beat in the fourth quarter. It was a 10-point game in the fourth quarter, and that was the difference in the game. They've
lost to Denver 8 straight games. I think when you look at what happened on Saturday, you could argue the biggest problem is Denver's just better than them and keeps proving they're just better than them.
Yeah, and that's probably going to be the case for most teams that play Denver over the course of a season, right? In the West is brutal, but the Lakers are sitting in 10th. Like they're at the bottom of the play-in. They're probably not going to fall out of the play-in, right? Given the teams below them, Utah probably not going to catch them. But this was not a team that is playing for the play-in. We talked about this a week ago. We're just sitting here going, why has this not worked better? And I guess that leads me to this question, Andy. Why does LeBron not, I mean, we know he's going to send his tweets and he's going to agitate and all those things, but it also seems like he wants to stay in LA. My question would be, at this point, why?
Because there's no guarantee that the next place he could go, he'd win a championship. And then in the meantime, you start looking like a bit of a carpetbagger, and you start looking like a guy that is maybe team hopping in ways that becomes a little bit too convenient. One of the things that has, I think, erased any notion of LeBron being, again, that sort of that carpetbagger, or the way people have looked a lot at, say, Kevin Durant, is LeBron has won a championship every single place he's gone. Yeah. He has finals MVPs with 3 different franchises. I think off the top of my head, he's the only person who's done that. I mean, the list can't be that big. If he's not alone, he is on a very short list of players. And that speaks to the power of LeBron James as a basketball talent, as a basketball force. Plus, I think if we're all being candid about this, he likes Los Angeles. His family likes Los Angeles. He's got a second career after basketball that he's living in real time while playing basketball. There are more reasons for him to stay than to leave, unless you're going to make winning a championship the only reason he plays for any team or is in whatever city he's in. The reasons to stay in LA, I think, outweigh the reasons to leave. And then again, there's no guarantee that he wins a title with that next metaphorical team.
If you're LeBron too, at a certain point you have to go, look, I can't win with the people that I can't win with anyway. So like the people that are going to criticize me are just whatever I choose, they're going to criticize me. It's interesting though, Andy, like we got all this Golden State talk about the trades and what was talked about, what wasn't, how much did LeBron know and all of that. It seems like he would have had to have said, Yes, if he wanted to go to Golden State, but is Golden State even a better situation for him than LA? I'm not even sure that there's a clear path there. If you're LeBron, you can just say, look, I'm happy in LA. I've accomplished everything I needed to accomplish. I'm just trying to be happy playing basketball now.
I mean, look, as of this recording, we're not too far removed, Peter, from Golden State getting beaten by 52 points in Boston. So it's like that notion of going to the Warriors, like the appeal to it. So what? He can just go back and forth between the 9th and 10th seed. You know what I mean? Like, what's really the difference? And also, though, it raises how difficult it actually is to trade for LeBron. If say he wanted to opt out of his contract this offseason, sign him outright because it doesn't seem like he's interested in taking a discount. So how many teams are going to be able to have that type of cap space available? If you start jettisoning players away to manufacture it, then you start weakening your actual roster. And you have to start thinking, even as great as LeBron still is, you can see the effects of age. Like he is, he would be the first person to tell you he's not the same guy that was with, say, the Heatles, or even the second go around with Cleveland.
Stay up to date all year on the LA Lakers by subscribing to Locked On Sports Today and Locked On Lakers on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube. Thanks for making Locked On Sports Today your first listen. Coming up, we give you the storylines you should care about from the NFL Combine. Before we get to that, we have a new all-time scoring leader in college basketball. Get buckets with your first bet on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 if your bet wins. Bet on all your favorite NBA players and teams with quick bets, same-game parlays, exclusive props, and more. You can also build live same-game parlays, mash those payouts. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and shoot your shot. The Milwaukee Bucks host the LA Clippers tonight. FanDuel likes the Bucks to get it done and has them favored by 4.5. FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NBA and official sportsbook of Locked On. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today, here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. Caitlin Clark has surpassed Pistol Pete Maravich and now holds the all-time scoring record for all of major college basketball.
I think just being me is just the biggest thing. Is like, I've just had fun and I've loved every single second I've been here. I've loved every single second I've gone to practice, played in a game. Obviously there's been ups and downs, and I think the biggest part of like my maturity and growth has been able to handle that and balance everything that's going on and around me and the noise around me. And obviously it can be hard at times, but I would never change that for the world.
The Celtics hung 140 on the Warriors. No, you heard me right. Not a misprint, 140. Boston beat Golden State by 52 to be exact.
I hope you put some money down on the Celtics to cover against the Warriors. No Kristaps Porzingis, didn't matter. The Celtics came out and did the job. Now, early on, it was a tight game, 21-21, but then they just took off from there. But let's start at the top. The big story, daring Jaylen Brown to shoot. He's shooting just about 28% on wide open three-pointers. That's 11% less than that last year. So you look at the numbers and you're like, I can kind of understand why the Warriors might do that. So they tried it. I think what the Warriors' strategy was if Jalen's going to shoot like that on wide open threes, let's test it. Let's test to see if he can do that. And what we'll do is we'll have Draymond Green as a sort of a roamer, and he can help protect the paint. And if Jalen hits one or two, fine. Well, he didn't hit one or two. He hit 5 in the first quarter. He had 19 points in 7 minutes in the first quarter.
In what has been a fun battle to watch in the Western Conference, the Clippers narrowly beat the T-Wolves in Minneapolis on Sunday.
Clippers pull one out. A gutty dig it out of the dirt, as Brian Seaman says, kind of win. But these are the kind of wins, a pitcher's duel, if you will, that you have to feel really good about. 89-88, a low scoring affair to say the least. But a win is a win, and the Clippers come away from this one having to feel pretty good about themselves. So this one came out with a lot of importance on it. Steve Ballmer, the owner, was there. That kind of a game for the Clippers, having dropped the first two to the Timberwolves. One in LA, one in Minnesota. The one in Minnesota was a 4-point game, 109-105, I believe. The one in LA was a complete shellacking. I think it was a 21-point or somewhere in that neighborhood defeat at the hands of the Timberwolves there at crypto.com. So round 3 gives the Clippers still an opportunity to win the season series, which will or not win it, at least split it, which will help them in playoff seedings.
If all goes according to plan, Joe Burrow will be cleared to join the Bengals for OTAs in May. The Cincinnati quarterback told ESPN on Sunday, "I think the middle of May is when I'm expecting to be kind of cleared for full contact and everything. Over the next month and a month and a half, we'll kind of decide these things." Burrow said that OTAs will be when he expects to return for full throwing sessions. Right now, he's throwing small medicine balls as he returns from a season-ending surgery on a wrist ligament he suffered November 16th in the team's Week 11 loss to Baltimore. The NFL Combine over the weekend, a reminder that NFL players do not resemble regular humans even at all. They are otherworldly athletes. And we got a new 40-time record, and we get a lot of business done in the NFL as well. Their contract negotiations start, even though, of course, they're not supposed to. And there is a lot that can be gleaned from going. Ross Jackson from Locked On NFL, Locked On Saints, of course, was one of the many Locked On hosts who made the Mecca trip to Indianapolis for the Combine. And Ross, an incredible class of offensive linemen, an incredible class of receivers showed out at the Combine, but there's also plenty to catch up on around the league, rumors, the scuttlebutt as well. So what is the storyline you're going to come out of this Combine going, I'm going to remember this about this Combine?
Yeah, I actually think there's a couple of those, but obviously the biggest one is what's expected to happen at the top of the NFL draft. And that is that the Chicago Bears at this point are effectively completely expected to draft Caleb Williams, the quarterback out of USC, who didn't even do medicals with teams. And I don't blame him, because why would you sit there and waste your time doing the same medicals 32 times over for the one team at the very beginning of the draft to say, yeah, we want you. And so what that also means, though, is that a potential trade when it comes to current Chicago Bears quarterback Justin Fields could be on the way sooner rather than later as well. Bears GM Ryan Poles talked about maybe trying to get that done sooner rather than later if that's the way that they go. Pittsburgh Steelers were a team that came up. Of course, the Atlanta Falcons near Fields' hometown came up. So I think that's the biggest one right now. But I will say that those weren't the only fireworks that were talked about in the top 5 of this year's NFL draft.
Yeah, and you know, the market, we got multiple reports that it's going to be softer for Justin Fields than maybe we originally thought, or than some of the narratives that were out there have been. There's a trickle-down effect here too, because you look at this draft and we got to see Caleb Williams, Drake May, Jaden Daniels, JJ McCarthy, but the only one we saw perform was JJ McCarthy. What do you make of the way that the Combine has evolved here? This was something we talked about before going in. Like, is this something that you think is going to become problematic at a certain point, that we're just not going to see these guys not have access to them?
Yeah, I think that the thing that's going to be impacted about it is the fan and viewer experience. I think that for the NFL clubs, showing up, getting those interviews down, being able to be down there on the field with them and say, let me see what happens if your plant foot's the other foot for a pass rusher or something like that, like being able to get your hands on the players. There's still value in terms of those opportunities and getting the interviews in, all those other pieces. But I think that the fan and viewer experience, it's going to eventually become a conversation of the proven and those who have something to prove. Yeah. And those who have something to prove will be the ones that test. Those that don't necessarily have anything to prove or as much to prove that maybe are at the top of their position. Even safeties, like the top safety didn't participate in drills. One of the top wide receivers didn't participate in drills. We saw it from a bunch of different positions. Yeah. So I think that's what it's going to come down to, is who's got something to prove. They'll probably test. And then over time, maybe something gets done about that. But I expect things to continue to trend, or at least trickle the way that they have been over the course of the past couple of years.
You mentioned fireworks in the top 5 potentially, whether it is in the draft or something that you may have heard about free agency trades. Is there a team that you have your eye on that's like, hey, this team, they could be in position to make some sort of big move that maybe we're not thinking about right now?
Yeah, I think a lot of eyes, and look, some people are probably thinking about this right now, but I do think that a lot of eyes are on pick number 3 in the NFL draft, the New England Patriots. But it's the team that might potentially jump up there that could be really interesting. If you start to think about the teams that need quarterbacks, but are just a little bit outside of the range to make sure they can get the guy that they want. The Las Vegas Raiders are in that conversation. The Pittsburgh Steelers could be a part of that conversation if they don't land Justin Fields. The Minnesota Vikings could be there if Kirk Cousins ends up getting moved. And according to some of Kevin O'Connell, their head coach's comments during the combine, that could potentially be on the way, considering, you mentioned deals aren't supposed to be getting done right now, but some agents are putting in some work. You know what I mean? And so when you look at those types of teams, amongst some others that are just outside of the top 5, top 3 or whatever, that are looking to maybe get their next quarterback, those could be teams to jump up to 3. And that would change a lot. That changes the way that you look at those teams that just moved up, changes the way that you look at the New England Patriots, and it changes the way that you potentially look at the quarterback landscape, not only in the draft, but in free agency as well, because one of the top quarterbacks that has been sort of connected to the New England Patriots over the course of Combine weekend is Baker Mayfield. And that's a guy that's supposed to stay in Tampa as far as we knew when the offseason began. So if they land a guy like a Baker Mayfield or otherwise, they might be in a position to trade back out of 3, and that could start the whole draft off a lot earlier than we've seen it start here recently.
Stay up to date all year on the NFL Draft by subscribing to Locked On Sports today and Locked On NFL Draft on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube. Coming up, the Spurs will have no trouble building a title contender around Victor Wembanyama. Generational talents in the draft can be kind of tricky. You don't want to commit too much too fast to throw lofty expectations on them. With Wemby, though, none of that matters, as Locked On NBA host Wes Goldberg and Adam Morris discuss.
I'm a very skeptical person when it comes to player development, but Wemby is making me break all that because I'm looking at this. There's been the rumors about maybe you go after Trae Young, maybe you do this or that.
Yeah,
I don't think it's that hard to build a surefire playoff team around Wembanyama.
And they've got Devin Vassell, who had a really nice night tonight against Oklahoma City. He's been really big in some big moments this year for San Antonio. You got 2 guys right there, and there's some other pieces, some interesting bench pieces, Sohan, all these other guys, some of the guards that they got coming off the bench, but go get a point guard. Just go do it and just go for it. Yeah, play in, play off, whatever. But this, Wemby's ready. And the one thing I will say with Wembanyama is I don't know how long his career is going to be. You just never know with these really, really tall guys. We've seen in the history of the NBA, I don't know how much time you really can afford to wait and do this whole player development thing in terms of the guys around Wembanyama. He's this good right now. Go get him a point guard. I don't even really care how old that point guard is. Everybody points to Trae Young because he's still pretty young. I'm like, just go get a guy. Go get a legitimately good point guard, some shooting. Wembanyama, Devin Vassell. You got Greg Popovich. Make the move. He's ready,
It's not exactly a hot take to say, oh yeah, Victor Wembanyama is going to be awesome. But to be this awesome, this fast, to have these 5-5-5 games, to block Chet Holmgren's jump shot in clutch moments, to look like this, man, it's impressive. But all that being said, you can be a unique superstar and still have to have a very specific kind of team built around you. Even someone like Giannis Antetokounmpo, who may be the best player in basketball, needs a certain kind of team around him. LeBron James, who may be the best player ever, needs a certain kind of team around him. And it's not a knock on those guys. It's a play style thing. Victor Wembanyama right now is showing, now the Spurs aren't winning a bunch, that he can be great independent of everything else. Find guys around him, considering what he can do on offense and defense, yeah, it's not going to be that hard. And finally, the world of sports journalism lost a great one yesterday. Chris Mortensen passed away at the age of 72 on Sunday morning. He joined ESPN in 1991 and was a regular guest on SportsCenter and known for breaking big NFL stories. In 2016, he received the Pro Football Writers of America's Dick McCann Award. and was honored during the Pro Football Hall of Fame's enshrinement ceremony in August of that year. On the Combine broadcast on Sunday, Daniel Jeremiah got emotional talking about his relationship with Chris Mortensen. When I was in college and people would ask what I wanted to do for a living, I often told them, I want to do what Chris Mortensen does. Aside from the professional part of it, Chris Mortensen, to hear his colleagues tell it, including his former colleague here on the Locked On Podcast Network, he was a special person. And so while I wanted to have a career like Chris Mortensen, it also seems clear that perhaps what I should also want is to affect people's lives in a positive way, the way Chris Mortensen did. Our business lost a Titan on Sunday. Rest in peace. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. Coming up on the next Locked On Sports Today, we cut through the noise of the NFL offseason, if we can. So at least until tomorrow, stay locked on sports today.
Locked On Podcast Network presents Locked On Sports Today.
For more episodes of Locked On Sports Today, go to our video on demand. Click on Sports at the top of your screen. There, you'll find past episodes of Locked On Sports Today, plus other Locked On shows on demand.